All right, gang, it's the technically second episode of the Misunderstood Cocktails series, the first episode in audio blog form. I started this series because, gosh darn it, I just get so frustrated sometimes. I mean, this is why. Because we live in a complicated world when it comes to cocktails, because so many cocktails that we enjoy are basically copies of a copy of a copy from something back in the 1920s. And somebody, puts a cocktail on a menu in 1960 and someone else likes it and then has to add their own twist to it in 1965 and so forth and so on. And then I'll go into this in another episode, the Martini episode, because that's a really good example. But you also have a lot of cultural influences. So, for example, when your parents are the cocktail people and you don't want to be anything like your parents, you do something completely opposite. You get away from alcohol being a big part of your culture to weed being a big part of your culture, for example, if you're born, in the baby boomer era. And so when cocktails start coming back in fashion in the 1980s, all the rules have changed. And so this whole, quote unquote cocktail renaissance that we've experienced since the beginning of the 2000s is really just mostly a rediscovery of what was going on in the 1920s, the 1930s, or even earlier than that, the 1890s. I mean, the old-fashioned cocktail was called the old-fashioned way of making a drink, an old-fashioned style cocktail, in 1890, when it was published in the first cocktail book. So yeah, so a lot of confusion happens, and then I just have to point out there are certain companies here in town that do cocktail education, and they basically just create like this kind of martini, that kind of martini, and it just adds to the confusion of what some of these drinks are. So the first episode was about the daiquiri and kind of how that actually started. It's September, which means it's the month of the Mexican Independence Day. That's right, you thought it was May 5th, you uncultured swine. Mexican Independence Day was September 14th. May 5th is the anniversary of a battle with the French. So there you go. They won that battle, by the way. So September 14th is the anniversary of Mexico's independence. So it only seems appropriate that we talk about the much muddled, much confused cocktail, the margarita, in September. So let's do it. So the margarita, I mentioned this in a previous episode, the idea of the Mr. Potato Head method, about basically taking a cocktail that works and using it as a template for something else. And we talked about the Tom Collins. So you had the gin, the sugar, which is the sweet agent, the lemon juice, which is the sour agent, and then you had the lengthening element, the club soda. And you can use that template for other kinds of drinks, like I did with the Cry Pretty in a previous episode. So this drink, the margarita, is basically just a variation on the sour rubric. It's the same drink in a way as the whiskey sour, as a bourbon sidecar, or as a cosmopolitan, etc., etc. What do you mean? So everyone thinks of margaritas as these big neon glow, frosty drinks in a giant fish bowl, and they're very, very sweet. And you have more than one of those, and you're just conked out for the entire day. And that's what it is to a lot of people. And unfortunately, what it's become is, as long as it has tequila in it, and as long as it's sour, it's a margarita, right? So if you have pineapple juice and jalapeno, it's a jalapeno pineapple margarita. If you want to throw cucumber in it, it's a cucumber margarita. Even if it doesn't have triple sec in it anymore, it's still a margarita because it's sour and it has tequila in it, right? Well, that's just really not true. It's like saying, hey, I've invented this new cheeseburger. It has lettuce and tomato and cheese and bun, but instead of a hamburger patty, it's a deli turkey. So it's still a burger, right? Well, no, it's not. It's really something different. It's a different experience. So it should be called something different. So I want you to think about it like that. This is how a margarita is actually made, and everything else is just basically a variation on that, which is creating its own experience. And that kind of helps to keep us from being too confused about what a drink actually is and the experience that it's trying to create for the imbiber. So the margarita is just a variation on a sour. So instead of bourbon, it's tequila. Instead of lemon juice, it's lime juice. And instead of simple syrup, it's triple sec, which is an orange liqueur. So that's all a margarita really is. It's a sour made with lime, triple sec, and tequila instead of another basic sour, like a pisco sour, which is just lime, sugar, and pisco. Or even the daiquiri, which is just rum, sugar, and lime. These are all just variations on the same idea. So I hope that makes sense. Of course, it's adorned with a salt rim, which adds to the experience. But at its heart, it's still just a sour. So that's how a margarita is actually made. Let's actually see what we can do to make it at home in a way that's going to be really refreshing and really authentic and not be full of filler, not be full of, that neon glow sour mix, which is mostly sugar. It's not really lime. It's not really actual juice or actual fruit. It's just weird chemical stuff that really just masks everything else. Let's make this delicious, authentic margarita at home. So to make a nice, refreshing, authentic margarita and have that real authentic experience, check the notes here in the blog to make that margarita at home. But if you want to do a little variation, I know I'm breaking my own rules here, but just hear me out on this. I'm going to give you an alternative recipe that you might like. So here we go. So start with your base spirit, tequila. I love brands like Espolon or Suerte. Or if you want to go cheap, there's a really cheap, simple brand called Tesoro Mio you might like. But whatever works for you, your favorite tequila. Could be Reposado or Blanco or Añejo. It's going to be great. 1.5 ounces of that into your mixing glass, followed by 1 ounce of triple sec. I like to do 1 ounce of triple sec and not cut it with the simple syrup or anything like that because you already have enough sweetness coming from the triple sec. Why add simple syrup to it? And it's more alcohol. Yay! So you get 1 ounce of triple sec along with your 1.5 ounces of tequila. Then do 1/2 ounce to 3/4 ounce of fresh squeezed lime juice. I give you permission to go between 1/2 ounce and 3/4 ounce, depending on how sour you like it. Add that to your mixing glass as well. Now, here's the rule breaker that I actually do, and I use it with every single event that I do, and everyone loves it. We think of margaritas in America as a long drink, as a large drink, not just a spirit-forward drink like a whiskey sour or that kind of thing. So to make it a little longer without making it full of empty filler, I do this. I actually add 1 ounce of a cheap but good Sauvignon Blanc. You get a little acidity, a little fruit from that wine, but you don't get any added sugar. And you get length. And so you get the length from the white wine, and that's going to kind of round out the hard edges of the sour lime, the intensity of the triple sec, and the humidity of the tequila. So you're going to get that length from that wine without adding extra sugar or extra filler. Shake and strain that into a cocktail glass, either served up or over ice. Of course, a salted rim and a lime wheel to top it off. Everyone's going to love it at your next margarita party for your September 14th Mexican Independence Day celebration, right? Because you don't do it in May 5th anymore. Okay, so if that sounds good to you, check that alternative recipe in the blog notes as well. Give it a taste, give it a little bit of experimentation. Hit me up with what you discover. Love to stay in touch with you. Again, if you haven't signed up to be part of our mailing list and to continue to get these awesome tips, awesome stories, awesome giveaways that we're sharing on the mailing list, please do sign up and stay in touch. We look forward to the next time we get to talk. And as always, if it's worth celebrating, celebrate well.